So first we have to start with what in physics is called the singularity. So that is the infinitesimal center that is zero-dimensional. It comes from a much greater world beyond our 3 dimensions, and then it expands outward into 3 dimensions. So that's the center, and then when it expands outward equally in all directions, that center then creates a sphere. That's why the sphere is the first form in sacred geometry, because it is the grail chalice, it is the vessel for the Godhead to create beings and life and activity and everything of that kind, all materialization. So from that infinitesimal center, spreading out in all directions to create the sphere, every point on the periphery of the sphere is equidistant to the center. So it's a perfectly balanced harmonic form. Now, if we wanted to use that as the form to have a perfectly balanced energy field around a living being, it would become the torus by opening it up at the top and the bottom, and then the movement through the center is going to be the central axis of the being. So if we look at this initial form of the sphere is the primary container of all manifestation and creation. There's only 5 perfect ways to divide that sphere, so that every one of the faces created by the division is exactly the same shape, that all the angles of every face are exactly the same, etc. And that's what's known as the Platonic solids. There's only 5 perfect divisions of a sphere. The highest of those is the dodecahedron, the one that has 12 pentagonal faces.
And what are the others?
That's the form. The dodecahedron is connected to the ether with 12 pentagonal faces. Then water has 20 faces and 12 nodal points, and that's connected to the icosahedron, 20 triangular faces. Then earth is connected to the cube, 6 square faces. The air is connected to the octahedron, which is like 2 pyramids connected base to base, 8 triangular faces. And fire is connected to the tetrahedron, which is 4 triangular faces. But we're talking about 12. So of those divisions, the most advanced of them was always considered to be, and secret, as we talked about before, because misused, it would lead to tremendous forces of destruction, which we saw in the first nuclear weapon, which was based on a dodecahedron.
Oppenheimer.
Yeah. I mean, you'll actually see this, I believe. I think there's actually a scene in Oppenheimer where before they put on the external cladding, you can see the thing's a dodecahedron. If not, you can find it in declassified photographs. And so those are the perfect divisions of a sphere. And so that gives rise to this energetic template behind the elements of creation. Well, let's take that initial sphere and look at it being a specific size. And this was popularized through the work of Buckminster Fuller in what he called the close packing of spheres. But what a lot of Bucky Fuller's work actually is the thought forms in the mind of God of the sacred geometry patterns. So his book, Synergetics 1 and 2, are incredible manuals of thought forms in the mind of God of geometry. They're incredible if you really know what that stuff is. And Buckminster Fuller was a genius. He should be studied in every engineering laboratory in the world.
I thought of him multiple times throughout this conversation.
Oh, he's
the geodesic dome and a lot of the geometric structure that you're talking about.
His work is so important. So if we take a look in what Buckminster Fuller called the close packing of spheres, you have one initial sphere. We just talked about how that gets created as a thought form in the mind of God. The original center, the one, the Godhead, expanding out in all directions to create the primal container of creation. Now you've got that. Now you're going to create a complex form. So how many spheres of equal size can you pack around the central sphere? It could be oranges or something as a simple illustration. And so you can get exactly 6 that are the same size as the central one. So 6 spheres on a horizontal plane, like at the bottom of a box, around the central one, so that they're all touching the central one. But you can't get a 7th one to touch the central one. But that 6 with the 1 becomes 7. Now how many can you get on top? You can get exactly 3 to touch the central one. How many on bottom? Exactly 3 to touch the central one. So that's called the close packing of spheres, and that is a key thought form in the mind of God to create a matrix of spherical energy.
Does that look like the physical representation of the flower of life, or is that separate? It's like fourth dimensional version.
If you were to make the flower of life three-dimensional and interpenetrate the spheres, then you'd have it.
All right.
So that is linked to it, but that's a different transformation. That's a transformation in 2 dimensions, and with the outer part of each circle touching the center of the adjacent circles. It's a different energy template, but another very important energy template. But sticking with the 12, having the 12 spheres around the central sphere becomes a thought form in the mind of God of this key pattern of creation. And so in the work of Rudolf Steiner, understanding about these key geometric numbers of creation, he talks about how important 1, 3, 7, and 12 are. So when we manifest a human spirit into a physical body, there's one anchor point for the I am spiritual core of the person. And that anchor point is in the cave of Brahma in the center of the head, around the pineal, really in a circulation between pineal and pituitary. But it's in the cave of Brahma, the third ventricle of the brain, this open space in the head. That's the anchor point for the One. That's our microcosm of the Godhead. That's us as our unified spiritual core. That the Kabbalists describe as the Godhead being an ocean of fire, and every individual human being as one spark from that ocean. That's where our spark resides. Then when you have the born-again experience, described in Pentecost in the Christian tradition, but also a part of the second birth ritual in India, you then see the ignition of the flame above the head. And at that point, the flame that's here ignites the flame above the head, and you've activated the powers of the first energy center above the head, and it literally becomes seen as spiritual vision like a flame form. So in working with the One, that's in the center of the head. Then the 3 are the anchor points for the human consciousness body, the astral body. And that's in the head, the chest, around the heart, and in the lower abdomen. And that becomes the 3 Dantian, the 3 elixir fields in Chinese medicine, for example, but also becomes thinking, feeling, and willing, and thought, speech, and action for the Buddhist. So that's literal anchor points in the human physical body. Then the 7 is related to the 7 primary etheric energy centers, which is the 7 chakras that we know from the Himalayan tradition. Then the 12 is related to 12 divisions of the human physical body. And so that's why you'll see these medieval diagrams where you have the circle of the zodiac, and every one of the 12 signs of the zodiac then gives rise to one part of the human body, from Pisces, the fish at the 2 feet, up to the crown of the ram, Aries, at the top of the head. So a 12-fold division of the human physical body. And by the way, this is actually used in Vedic astrology, in Vedic medical astrology, in Indian hospitals, to understand how certain configurations in transits are going to affect a person's physical body when they're ill. It's quite remarkable the way that works. So that's the idea then of the 1, 3, 7, 12, which we have a part of that in the Jewish Kabbalistic system when they talk about the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, which says that the Hebrew alphabet is divided into 3 mother letters, 7 double letters, 12 elemental letters. All of these are different ways of understanding these core geometric patterns of creation as they're expressed through number. So with the 12 levels of the human being and its foundation in the thought form in the mind of God of the 12 around the One, we have the manifestation of the zodiac in the world around us, around the sun, around our solar system, literally manifest in the physical body. The zodiac manifests as the 12 levels of the physical body. This also can manifest, like in the work of Rudolf Steiner, he describes to truly understand anything in the physical world, you have to conceptually walk a circle around it, and you have to see it from 12 different perspectives. The only way to really understand anything in its reality is to see it from 12 different perspectives. So this is similar to the blind men and the elephant idea. If you only had one blind man feeling the elephant, it's a wall. Another one feels that it's a spear. Another one feels that it's a rope. But you have to put all those perspectives together to know it's an elephant. But it takes 12 of those directions. That's why we've divided the stars around our sun into 12 parts. It's just the way that things work energetically. So Steiner then brought out that the 12 is this core harmonic of manifesting on the physical plane. So the 1 is connected to the high spiritual worlds. That's where our I am presence come from, like the one anchor point, or the Godhead, the One. Then you have the 3 is related to the astral plane, the astral world, with our consciousness. The 7 is related to the etheric life force. And then the 12 is related to actual physical manifestation. So Steiner talked about at one time that when you look at great initiatory processes, they tend to be 12 around the 1. And so there are 12 disciples around Christ, because no one disciple could understand the nature of the Christ being. It takes 12 perspectives to see it in its totality. Steiner also said that working in spiritual action groups, where you have a group of spiritual initiates that are quite advanced, he said that the optimal form for that is to have 12 in that group. So when he talked about the initiation that took place for the initiate known as Christian Rosenkreuz, who was the founder of the Rosicrucian tradition, said that was 12 initiates around Christian Rosenkreuz to make that possible. And he said any time that you can put together a group of 12 initiates that function, each one is in a sense representing a sign of the zodiac. And that's true in the New Testament. Every one of the 4 writers of the Gospels are holding one of the 4 cardinal places of the cross in the sky of the 4 key signs of the zodiac. So, for example, John is the eagle, and the eagle is the higher octave of Scorpio. And then you have the lion and etc. So that's actually showing the zodiacal representation. So the 12 allows each of the cosmic forces to manifest through a perspective and grounded in a person. And Steiner once said that we could change the destiny of the earth in a very beneficial way, because some things are not going the right direction currently. We could change it in the most beneficial way if there were 12 groups of 12 on the planet. It's all you would need, is 12 groups of 12.
Being what?
Being spiritual action groups that can not only do meditative work together, but also work together to create and found new spiritual impulses in the world, like happened in the past when like a great spiritual tradition, like the Hindu tradition, the Vedic tradition began in India type of thing. So if we had 12 groups of 12, all things would become possible. Now, of course, we're dealing with the 144. And so we need to be very clear that all of these things having to do with the spiritual power of 144 is what you get with the 12 of the 12 harmonic.
And the significance of 144 is what?
Significance of the 144 is it's the totality of the groups of 12. And so at that point, you've got the complete matrix system in place.